All right, everyone. First off, a little apology to some of my fellow Discord members who thought this was real for a second. It is not, alas. This is my third concept of a Gallifreyan typewriter, but it's not actually real. What you're seeing me do right here is set the stage. I have a few photographs ready, and now I am making the actual Artbyboredom alphabet that I'll be placing onto the disk. I cheated a little bit here in the sense that I pre-generated all these raw SVG files from the Mighty Frong's translator helper because I know I'm going to use the standard symbols anyway, and there's no reasonable reason to make them by hand. So the main thing I need to do right now is take all these individual symbols, and the way the SVG exports these files leaves a little to desired. So it's not perfect at all. It's a bunch of fonts. Sorry, not fonts. It's a mix between outlines and fills, and you have fills inside other fills, and it's not really great. So I spent a little bit of time just cleaning that up, making it everything streamlined, putting everything into paths, making all those different elements work together and combine the whole thing into one singular letter so that everything was streamlined and ready for use. So while I'm doing this, let me talk a little bit about the actual typewriter you're seeing. This is the FAMOS index typewriter, and some would consider this a toy. I don't really know the full history of this thing other than the fact that it's about 110 years old, not very popular, cumbersome to use, and it was cheap. The one I have is pretty rusted, but the pro is it is a simple mechanism. It's it's easy to understand and use, and it's circular, as most index typewriters would be, which makes it perfect for Gallifreyan applications because Gallifreyan is a circular script. If you make a typewriter for Gallifreyan, why would it not be circular? That seems logical to me. So this is a perfect typewriter to convert into a Gallifreyan equivalent. And this particular index machine has both upper and lowercase letters, as well as punctuation and numbers and some diacritics. And the language that I know of, the system that I know of, that comes closest to fulfilling all those elements is the Artbyboredom script, which you're seeing me do a rendition of here. So that fit the bill for a lot of characters, and most of the all of the punctuation actually, all of the letters, both upper and lowercase. It does not contain numbers and it does not contain diacritics. So I left those parts of the original typewriter disk blank for the purposes of realism. I'm not going to invent anything that doesn't actually exist just for the sake of this. That doesn't make me a hypocrite, right? No, I thought not. So, having done this and made the actual alphabet and the letters, it is now time to clean it up a little bit, make the whole thing uniform, and make it ready for actual placement on the disk, which requires a little tiny, teeny bit of preparation because I'm going to have to do some spacing. I'm going to have to do some placement engineering. And the idea here is pretty simple, actually. I have a lot of letters and I have a lot of placements. So I made a big honking star after doing some counting, doing some division, and doing a little bit of eyeballing, frankly. But it all made up in the end. This is of course not perfect because there is some perspective involved. Everything is a little bit warped. Everything is a little bit turned on its side, so it's not a perfectly straight on view. But that's okay for me. I'm not really concerned about that. Once I do a sufficient number of transformations and disguises, this will look pretty much as good as any photograph you can actually do. It's not, it's not quite Photoshop levels, but with enough patience and tools, Inkscape can do whatever you need in this regard. That's my opinion anyway. So what you see me do right now is place every single symbol onto the ends of this polygon, so they are approximately spaced wherever I need them. This is the same technique I use whenever I make compasses or clocks. Just use a polygon with the appropriate amount of points, and then use those reference points as, well, snapping points really, placing all my stuff onto it. And this is, give or take a single character space width. This is pretty accurate. Now, having done that, I still need to respect the actual orientation of the letters. They don't all point down. That would ruin the whole thing once you spin the wheel. So I need to orient all of the letters according to their relative up and down directions, which is why I added that little red direction marker thing before I started placing my letters. Using this and a judicious application of the snapping mechanics and the rotation mechanics, I ended up doing the tedious work of just adjusting everything relative to the right direction. And I needed that because, I needed a snapping because I need to reorient the center of rotation every single time, which was very tedious, but it worked out in the end. And I mean, honestly, I think it took half an hour or something. So I'm probably making it sound a bit worse than it was. Now, I'm pretty happy with that. Now it's time to do the actual magic that makes this fit onto the disk. And I'm using basically a single transformation to do this, and then I'm locking everything in place afterwards. So I get one shot of this, otherwise I need to start over. But it took a lot of fiddling with the transformation tool to get everything just right. And even then, I think there's maybe one or two letter spaces at some point that got lost in translation. But that's, the way it is. The last step and the most tricky for me is to disguise the original text. Now, this surface is very textured. There's a lot of rust going on. There's a lot of patina. There are color changes based on the lighting and the material and everything. So I'm trying to put small snippets of material from other places. Basically, I'm doing a skin draft, grafting texture from other places off the typewriter disk onto the surfaces where I need to disguise the letters. So I'm placing these small snippets of the surface onto other surfaces. And this looks great in SVG format. Once I export this, it's going to be a little ugly. Frankly, a lot of the magic is going to disappear once I export this, but in here, in this program, it's going to look pretty darn well, if I say so myself. Especially when you're not scrutinizing this thing for every single pixel you can. Now, for the last step here, the letters and symbols stand out too much. They're too clean, they're too nice, they're too even. Everything looks too good. It stands out immediately. So I'm disguising this with a combination of node manipulations. I'm doing it with some live path manipulations. I'm doing it with some texture overlays and cutaways. And then I'm also doing some bitmap manipulations of the texture itself. So I'm actually converting the math-based objects back into pixels to better blend it into the rest of the pixel image, so that once I'm done, hopefully, I'll have hit a balance between readability and pixelated stuff. So the whole thing blends together and you won't be able to pick out any single thing as being, this is clearly added in afterwards. Now, at the last second, I add in some extra rust. This is something that doesn't really pay off in the actual export. A lot of the textures that I added and the different filters needed to make that blend disappeared in the actual export presumably because of the low resolution of the image, which was necessary for other reasons. But nonetheless, here I am, having put the text on the disk. I now need to make a fake actual written sample. And I'm doing this with the exact same techniques as I did on the actual disk, a combination of pixel elements, texture elements, and just straight up node manipulation. I feel like I'm pretty good at that. And you will end up seeing the final result in a second. Now, the last tricky thing about this is once I'm done with this text, I'm going to need to match up that placement of the text here with the appropriate placement on the actual letter up in the other picture on the printer. I use the word printer very loosely here, by the way. So that's what you see me try to do right now. I'm trying to match the placement and relative stretch, or maybe stretch is not the right word, but you know, the way the thing is distorted based on the curvature and placement and angle and stuff, trying to make that whole thing match. And this is probably my weakest point because I didn't put enough effort into making the warping look just right. So if anything's going to look fake, it's going to be this. On the contrary, I hope this picture in particular won't be scrutinized too much because there'll be a much better picture of the actual text down below, so people won't look too closely at the picture above. So that's the main picture right there. We have the disk, we have the text on the disk, we have a small sample printed down onto the paper, and then people will go to the other picture, look closer at the actual piece of written text, and they'll be like, wow, look at that. It's amazing. You've done it again. And so this is pretty much it. This is my third Gallifreyan concept, and I hope you liked it. And again, sorry for you know who you are if you got too caught up in this, and thank you to everyone else who really sold the effects of this. Really, you gave it all. Thanks, guys. And I will see you another time with another project. Bye.